In the distant past, when earth was still fresh and lush with legends, a tattered scroll, hiding from the whole of existence, bore knowledge that could shatter the foundations of biblical credence. And the stories of this Book of Jasher are versed in the echoes of the sacred and the profane. The Book of Jasher, uncovering the hidden, a journey towards its true origins, a resonance with mystery. The Book of Jasher resonates with a captivating mystery. Its origins and its message remain elusive to those who seek to understand the deep truths embedded within its pages. Not to be confused with the Book of Joshua or any of the other canonized biblical texts, the Book of Jasher is an odd, ancient text that has been largely lost to institutional copies of the Holy Word. Frequently alluded to in ancient Jewish texts, including the books of Joshua and Samuel, it is a testimony to a time before religious dogma had entered into formal establishment. But what is this book? And why has it been so thoroughly hidden from the modern world? Is it possible that within this text lies mysteries that, if exposed, would develop the way we read history and scripture? No one knows where the Book of Jasher comes from. Traditionally, it is thought to have been transcribed by an ancient scribe known as Jasher during the time of the biblical patriarchs. Others claim it was done by a group of scribes who preserved oral tales that had been told for generations. The exact time and place of its authorship are unknown, although it has been confirmed to have circulated amongst ancient Jewish communities. Though never part of the biblical canon, the Book of Jasher is most notably mentioned within the Old Testament in Joshua 10:13 and 2 Samuel 1:18. So what then do we make of the loss of the book from the biblical canon? If yes, what truths did it hold that were too dangerous or too true to be known in the world? The origins of the Book of Jasher are just as mysterious as its contents, though some fragments of this text have been preserved and rediscovered in various forms. Many regard it as an apocryphal text. The preserved texts imply that Jasher wrote about how people lived in the early world, from Adam to Noah, and treated the Great Flood. Now the stories that this book reveals, from their pages to ours, bring us a glimpse of the world in fragments before and after the Great Flood, the rise and fall of the civilizations that ruled its domains, the intermingling of the angels with the humans, and the forces unseen that created the destiny that is led before us. However, in contrast to the canonical scriptures, Jasher approaches these events with a more maximalist, lyrical perspective, going deep into the lessons of piety and depravity in those days. This sprawling account debates the most recognizable figures in the Bible, and scholars believe it may give them a more direct, unfiltered lens on the ancient world. However, despite some interesting content, the Book of Jasher's status in Jewish tradition is shaky at best. There are references to it in Talmudic literature, but its status has never been definitively established within the religious canon. While some have dismissed the text as a work of fiction, others have adopted it as a historical work of significance. But one thing that cannot be denied is the effect the book has had on Jewish thought and culture. Its storytelling is imbued with potent symbolism and encourages readers to view the world through ancient eyes, wherein divine intervention could change the course of a life, and the fate of entire nations was dependent on the decisions of their leaders. But what significance does the Book of Jasher hold? Is it possible that it will help us to understand some of those passages of Scripture that appear to be missing, or as if they are missing some of what we think we need to know? This has led many scholars and religious thinkers to question whether Jasher's account can provide new insight into the lives of biblical figures. For example, the account of Noah and the flood in the Book of Jasher includes additional details that are absent from the usual biblical texts. These details go further into the reasoning behind Noah's behavior and the moral instructions within the story. The same could be said for Jasher's alternative versions of many other well-known biblical stories, from the Tower of Babel to the stories of the patriarchs, opening up new perspectives on these familiar tales. It's even been speculated that the Book of Jasher could bridge the divide between the two, acting as a precursor to the reconciliation between the biblical and apocryphal traditions. The Bible itself includes many references to other lost or forgotten books, such as the Book of the Wars of the Lord and the Book of the Covenant, suggesting that Jasher's rediscovery might be part of something greater, that there may exist a larger body of ancient writings once deemed sacred, but lost to the sands of time. Is there a library of ideas in there waiting to be unlocked, hidden beneath the dust and time and ignorance of centuries? For not only religious scholars, but for all those who wish to understand the deeper currents of human history, the discovery of the Book of Jasher would be an epoch-making event. It would give readers a different lens on biblical events, and not just a breakdown of the timeline of ancient history. Jasher's stories come with rich moral teachings, nuanced character studies, and philosophical explorations that are still relevant to readers today. The lost scrolls of antiquity, hidden beneath the sands of time, may contain the keys to some of humanity's most persistent questions, answers that would reshape our understanding of the divine, the human predicament, and the nature of history itself. So, as we dive into the hidden truths of the Book of Jasher, we quickly discover that the road to our ancient past is a bumpy one. The scrolls of yore that were lost to history need to be approached with caution, contemplative thought, as well as the readiness to discover secrets that have been hidden for thousands of years. Yet in the process, we might discover that we are not only reading an ancient text, it is the Book of Jasher that may prove to be one of the better conduits to our remote past, and one that reveals deeper insights into the spiritual and ethical principles underlying the human experience throughout the ages. The Book of Giants is one of the most obscure and enigmatic texts from the ancient world. Not included in the biblical canon, this book provides an unusual and often controversial insight into the Nephilim and their relationship with men. The Book of Giants is most commonly linked to the Dead Sea Scrolls and is part of what is deemed the larger sphere of the apocryphal or pseudepigraphical literature, works that were ascribed to biblical persons but deemed too controversial to be excised from the canon of Scripture. Scholars speculate that the content of the book is fragmented, referring to the ways that fallen angels called Watchers interacted with human women. The resulting union produces the Nephilim, a race of giants. In the Book of Giants, the giants are mighty beings whose earthly presence wreaks havoc. These titans, who are powerful but often are depicted as corrupt, indulgent, and destructive, like their angelic fathers. These ties between angels and humans, and the offspring that result, speak to profound theological and moral anxieties, especially around forbidden knowledge and divine justice. Scholars had a glimpse of a part of its story due to the discovery of the Book of Giants through the Dead Sea Scrolls. Papers of the book were scattered among the Qumran scrolls, giving a tantalizing view into ancient Jewish thought. Still, much of the encoding is still incomplete, and a sizable part of the text has been lost and/or damaged, leaving us in question how much knowledge has been lost over time. Rather, it was divided into several pieces, but the Book of Giants remains an intriguing work even with its broken structure, which has intrigued scholars and readers alike. The fact that it appears among the Dead Sea Scrolls indicates that it was a known and popular text in certain Jewish sects before it was omitted from the mainstream canon of Scripture. It shares many thematic elements, such as forbidden knowledge, divine punishment, and the repercussions of challenging celestial law, with numerous other apocryphal and mythic tales from across cultures. The Book of Giants, in underscoring heavenly beings visiting and interacting with humanity, raises the stakes for our understanding of ancient beliefs in angels, the divine, and what evil means. The major focus of the Book of Giants is the Nephilim, giants referenced in the Book of Genesis and several other ancient texts. The very term Nephilim has itself been shrouded in obscurity and debate. It can mean fallen ones or giants, depending on your interpretation, but its exact meaning is unknown. In Genesis 6:1-4, the Nephilim are described as the progeny of the sons of God and daughters of men, a passage that has sparked centuries of speculation and discussion. The Book of Giants offers a more detailed account of these creatures. These giants are viewed as much about their size as well as their power and knowledge. They are created by the Watchers, angels who came down to earth and took human wives, resulting in a direct violation of divine order. Unlike the dutiful, obedient angels of biblical tradition, the Watchers in the Book of Giants are portrayed as rebellious, which, among other things, brings forth the Nephilim. Because the Nephilim in this book are an uncanny link between heaven and earth, crossing lines that should have remained uncrossed. They constitute a breaking of divine harmony, the earth being full of violence and corruption due to their very existence. This plays into ancient mythology best, where deities or divine aspects acted as mediators for human vicissitudes, on many occasions with dire consequences. Nephilim legends are not limited to the Book of Giants. Many ancient traditions have similar themes threaded throughout, including the Epic of Gilgamesh and other Mesopotamian myths. Divine beings are also prone to only taking on, or rather, popping out of the oven in human form, as having affairs with mortals leads to offspring that often blur the line between heaven and earth. In many ways, the Nephilim are a kernel of this larger mythos, a subject of ancient cultures who wondered, according to ancient cultures, about powerful beings who could influence or shape history. This Book of Giants was never in the canon, i.e., both Jews and Christians do not accept it as part of their canonical texts. But, as we will see below, it has greatly influenced the history of early thinking within these two religions. It has shaped both Jewish apocalyptic literature and early Christian theology. For Jews, the text provided insight into the complex and often dysfunctional relationships between humans and divine beings, a theme that echoed parts of other Jewish apocalyptic works, including the Book of Enoch. It greatly impacted the development of Jewish beliefs concerning the final judgment of the wicked and the restoration of the divine order. Their fall to a divine onslaught mirrored developments in Jewish eschatology, where redemption and restoration from sin are sought through heavy-handed divine action to return the world to righteousness. The destruction of the giants, punished by the gods and finally exterminated, confirmed the belief that divine justice would always triumph over evil. The Book of Giants also influenced early Christian thinking on sin, redemption, and evil. The Watchers and their fall to earth have a parallel story in Christian mythology, specifically the fall of the angels and Lucifer's position in the narrative. These themes underscore the consequences of resistance to divine authority in both traditions, providing a moral framework for interpreting the cosmic struggle between good and evil. Moreover, the hybrid nature of the Nephilim as both divine and human beings anticipates Christian theological concerns with how Jesus Christ was the true God and true man. The Book of Giants was eventually excluded from both Jewish and Christian canons, but had a significant impact on emerging Christian ideas such as the role of angels, the nature of sin, and the dichotomy between good and evil. Its apocalyptic imagery resonated with Christian writings, including the revelation of John, which promises the ultimate defeat of evil forces. This legacy indicates how, although pushed to the edges of biblical literature, the Book of Giants helped to formulate the worldview of early religious communities. The Book of Giants is a significant work in the apocalyptic literary genre, a category of writing that includes visions of the apocalypse, the demise of evil forces, and the final victory of righteousness. Amid persecution and crisis, Christian and Jewish communities produced and used apocalyptic literature to decode their suffering with divine justice and promise of redemption. The Book of Giants has much in common with other apocalyptic literature, especially the Book of Enoch and the Book of Daniel. Like these works, it has an interest in angels and divine beings as agents in human affairs, the way their agency determines the fortune of the world. The giants' eventual demise stands as a potent metaphor for the ultimate victory of divine justice over lawlessness and immorality, a recurrent theme in apocalyptic literature. Indeed, the Book of Giants foreshadows many of the issues that would become focal in Christian apocalyptic thought. The notion of fallen angels or disobedient heavenly beings who might taint humanity mirrors a long-standing fear of the impact of wickedness on society. Later, Christian texts, like the Revelation of John, also return to this theme, portraying angels as messengers, but also as agents in the final judgment and the completion of history. The Book of Giants contributes to early apocalyptic thought that runs throughout biblical history in both Jews and Christianity through its lively narrative and imagery. Although not officially part of the biblical canon, its impact continued through the generations, showing an abiding significance in the theological and literary traditions that followed. The Book of Jasher, similar to the Book of Giants, offers an alternative perspective on ancient biblical history, though they differ significantly in their origins. So to grasp the relationship of these two ancient texts, we need to re-evaluate their relative themes and overarching narratives. Imagine the Book of Jasher, where we get an even more detailed story than what's in the actual Bible. It provides more information about the patriarchs and stories like the flood of Noah and the Tower of Babel. This book is an attempt to add extra layers to the biblical timeline. In Jasher, for instance, Enoch is mentioned in very concrete terms as a man very close to God, and indicates a world that is more nuanced than that found in the mainstream scriptures. While the Book of Giants discusses the giants, the Nephilim, who were the progeny of the sons of God and the daughters of men. This story explores how these giants came to be and what happened after they passed, interested in the series of apocalyptic events that they helped bring about. In this telling, the giants represent great power, yet also, as forces of destruction, their presence in the world brings about immense havoc. Their story is so deeply intertwined with that of the Book of Enoch, that the two are frequently presented together with the Book of Giants as a sort of appendix to the Book of Enoch. The treatment of divine justice and the consequences of disobedience is one key similarity that is present in both books. Both speak of a divine order that is marred by humans and the beings who share the earth. In the Book of Jasher, the wicked deeds of Cain and Lamech also lead to violent consequences, similar to those described in the Book of Giants about the giants. The overall theme of cosmic justice becomes apparent in the stories of both works, emphasizing the belief that no action goes unseen by God, lest it is both seen and accounted for somewhere else. A second recurring theme is divine intervention. In terms of the underlying concept, both books share similar themes that involve the idea of gods or angels intervening in human affairs to preserve order or to react to the devastation caused by rebellious beings. The Book of Jasher chronicles several such divine interactions with humans, such as the warnings of Noah before the flood, while the Book of Giants shows that the actions of the giants are seen as a transgression of divine laws, so that these actions ultimately bring forth direct intervention from God or his celestial henchmen. But the difference is a question of who the beings are and the nature of these beings. The Book of Giants presents a quite different, much more supernatural world, with beings of otherworldly strength, while the human characters, angels and prophets, take center stage in the Book of Jasher. As mentioned above, these giants are sons of divine beings and mortal women, thus a hybrid race that is part human and divine, yet separated by their physical stature and behavior from the human race. Looking closely at these two texts, we can start to see how the authors of both texts probably understood the divine order, as well as what happened before, during, and after the flood. That recurring motif of fallen beings, whether giants or evil men, shows a universe not just the product of divine creation, but one molded by the decisions of heavenly and terrestrial creatures alike. Exploring how the themes and narratives of the Book of Jasher and the Book of Giants compare illuminates a great deal about the early understandings of divine law, cosmic order, and the strife between humanity and celestial beings. While the details might differ in these texts, their themes are strikingly similar, offering us a textured and complex understanding of how the ancient societies imagined their world and its origins. As we explore the Book of Jasher and the Book of Giants, a tantalizing question emerges. Beyond shared surface similarities, do they intersect in essential themes, motifs, and narratives? To address this, we must look at the common themes and characters and divine actions in the stories being told. Though the two books come from wildly different places and very different cultures, the themes of both books are rich and complex, and they somehow reflect each other in so many ways. A leading theme that is common between them is the decaying of humanity. Some individuals, like Cain and Lamech, and even whole communities, such as the people who built the Tower of Babel, demonstrate widespread corruption and violence in the Book of Jasher. These humans rebel against divine order and take the paths of evil, and their reward is divine punishment, like the flood that exterminates nearly all life on earth. Although the Book of Giants also touches on the idea of corruption, it focuses on the Nephilim, the giants, and the devastation that their presence on earth causes. Not only are these beings physically huge, but they are morally corrupt as well, the offspring of fallen angels and human women. They eat and destroy everything and everyone they encounter, but their very actions result in their demise, like the rebellious humans in the Book of Jasher. Both works also have a story of divine retribution. A clear example of this is in the story of the flood, where God wipes out humanity except for Noah and his family because they are corrupt in Jasher. As in the Book of Giants, divine punishment comes to the giants for their wickedness, and astrological prefigurement of their demise is signaled by heavenly powers, much as upon the earth in Jasher. The notion that some sense of cosmic imbalance needs to be corrected by the gods in response to human or hybrid transgressions is a thread that runs through both stories. This is a divine action that is required to balance the order. It can even mean to wipe out several civilizations. The other commonality between these two books is the cost of forbidden knowledge. In the Book of Jasher, we witness humans that pursue knowledge even more than God intended. in the Tower of Babel, where the builders attempt to access heaven, blatantly opposing what God has ordained. So their languages are confused, and they are scattered over the earth. 51. In the Book of Giants, the giants are described as wise and knowledgeable, often through the instruction of the fallen angels. Such knowledge is not for the benefit of humanity, and it brings devastating consequences in its wake, especially when it is bent on corrupting or destroying. And that same knowledge leads to the giants' doom, much like the human rebellions of Jasher brought about perdition. The overlap is most striking with the figure of the Watcher, fallen angels in the Book of Giants and divine messengers in the Book of Jasher, the celestial beings who remind us what the holy way looks like, but also the consequences of straying. The Watchers of the Book of Giants instruct the giants in the arts of warfare, weapon-making, and sorcery, all of which only intensify the giants' devastation. Likewise, divine messengers in the Book of Jasher seem to tell Noah, or the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, of impending doom. Both books demonstrate divine beings interfering in human affairs, and that their involvement rarely ends well, either for giants or humans. Both books also explore the corruption of divine order through the creation of a hybrid race of beings. The giants in the Book of Giants are direct descendants of the union between fallen angels and human women, a blatant disruption of the cosmic order. The Book of Jasher also contains similar accounts such as divine beings, like the angels, taking wives from humans, and the offspring they produce polluting the natural world. This parallels the creation of hybrid beings in both texts, and the resultant morality is clear. When divine beings intervene in human affairs, things go awry, chaos ensues, beings of power perish or are punished, and all of it comes from outside forces. Hybridization is a violation of the law of nature and results in destruction. There's also a strong sense of fate and prophecy in both books. In Book of Giants, the giants are aware that their destruction is coming according to the prophecy, but they persist in their evil ways, unable or unwilling to repent. The Book of Jasher likewise has characters like Noah or Lot, who are aware of the impending judgment and attempt to warn others, only to have the people ignore the warning. Both texts share a prevailing theme regarding the development and workings of prophecy and fate, combined with divine will and knowledge that shapes the fates of not only humankind, but giants as well. Despite these notable parallels, the books also diverge in some respects, mirroring the different cultural backdrops against which they were penned. The Book of Jasher is more anthropocentric, dealing with the families of the just and the brutish, whereas the Book of Giants relates stories of beings outside the realm of what we would consider humans. And if, while both always weave in how divine beings affect the course of mankind, the Book of Giants goes deeper into divinity in a more fantastical than physical sense. There are angels, giants, bear and lion men, prophetic dreams, etc., where the Book of Jasher remains almost heavily aligned to a human story with its repercussive ties to biblical narrative. The Book of Giants and the Book of Jasher both draw uniquely upon the ancient world they inhabit, yet the shared themes between the two pieces, such as the corruption of humankind, the punishment that follows the delving into forbidden knowledge, and divine retribution, suggest a diverse but interlinked connection between the two. Examined through the lens of both giants and human beings, these overlapping themes invite further examination of the unsolved puzzles that connect these texts and their possible influence on later apocalyptic literature. These ancient works are tied together by the reminder that the relationship between the divine and the human world is not fixed, and transgressions of that relationship can have devastating and unexpected consequences. This news site may contain copyrighted material, the use of which has not been specifically authorized by the copyright owner. There is still the possibility that they were developed as a reflection of one another, although there is no actual evidence that one directly influenced or copied the other. They were both simply descriptors of something to be experienced. In this subsection of my analysis, we will explore potential sources or influences that could account for the thematics and narrative overlaps between these two works, which appear to come from distinct traditions, yet share an arresting resonance. One possible common influence frequently proposed is the ancient oral tradition that may have shaped both works. These texts were, before the ink was put to paper, probably in the form of oral stories or songs, passed from one generation to another. The legacy of oral traditions is inherent in these ancient texts, including the Book of Jasher and the Book of Giants. Myths of giants, divine intervention, and the fall of humankind were told orally for centuries before being written down. The link between different versions of the same story may derive from shared oral roots, and thus authors living in different times and places included similar accounts and motifs. Additionally, both books are concerned with transcendent figures, indicative that both cultures share some commonality of perspective regarding the sacred and divine. Fallen angels who bred with humankind, therefore hybrid beings, Nephilims of the Book of Giants and the giants of the Book of Jasher, they are matryoshka. Such hybrid figures suggest a common cultural trope that crosses the lines dividing separate traditions. Babylonian, Mesopotamian, and Canaanite mythologies, for instance, often presented gods and humans intermixing to produce ominous offspring. These earlier mythologies told similar stories of gods coming down to earth and having hybrid children, and may have influenced the Book of Jasher and the Book of Giants. Another possible influence is the ancient Israelite and Jewish traditions themselves. They are frequently associated with the wider web of Jewish apocryphal literature, which encompasses works like the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, and the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs. The three works made up a part of Jewish thought that was not fully included in the canonical Bible, but were influential and were a source of wisdom, considered at times to be divinely inspired. The Book of Jasher is an apocryphal text that heavily relies on Genesis and Exodus and is thus often considered part of this tradition. The story of the Book of Giants, which is less known but also relates to Jewish heritage, focuses a lot on the same themes of fallen angels, suggesting a commonality with the union of fallen angels and the Nephilim. It is also instructive to note that there is great potential overlap in these two works about the Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch is a retelling of the story of the Watchers, angels who come down to earth, marry human wives, and have the Nephilim. There are many similarities between this text and some other texts, specifically the Book of Giants and the Book of Jasher, with this passage in particular. Both the Book of Giants and previously the Book of Jasher may have been drawing accordingly from the Book of Enoch, or the ideas presented in a common pool of traditions about the Watchers and the Nephilim. In addition to the Book of Giants, which mentions the Nephilim directly, and the Book of Jasher, which contains numerous figures similar to the Nephilim, all three texts are thought to reflect early Jewish apocalyptic thought, evidenced through the Book of Enoch that interconnects them. Furthermore, the Book of Jasher and the Book of Giants could have drawn upon the wider ancient Near Eastern cosmology's connections between deities, cosmic events, and human history, where divine interaction with the world was common, addressing themes of divine involvement in human affairs. This can be read as inspired by the account of the Sumerians, Babylonians, and even the Canaanites, who, according to the Old Testament, also had myths of gods intervening in human affairs and leading either to the creation of legendary beings or the destruction of civilization. The Book of Giants especially, with its tales of divine beings and their progeny bringing chaos to earth, appears to be a mirror of these ancient traditions. The Book of Jasher, which is even more centered around the humanity involved in the narrative, recalls such ancient cosmologies in his deliberation of divine punishment of the wicked. Another candidate for the source of influence is the Hebrew Bible itself, specifically the Genesis story of the Nephilim and the flood. The stories in the Book of Jasher mirror closely those found in the Bible, but often elaborate more details or highlight elements that are implicit in the Genesis account. The Book of Giants mentions the Nephilim and their doings that led to the flood, which is also a central theme of both books. Each text serves to richly elaborate on the slim and enigmatic passages referring to the Nephilim in Genesis, offering a more detailed account of the origins, deeds, and final destiny of these figures. These texts may have shared the same oral stories and core narratives as the Hebrew Bible. The only other source of influence, however, was the apocalyptic literature that became active around the time of the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem in 70 CE and continued for the next few centuries. This survival of a body of literature including such works as Daniel, the Book of Enoch, and the Revelation of John addresses themes of divine judgment, the end of days, and the final victory of good over evil. Elements of the genre are evident in both the Book of Jasher and in Book of Giants, especially with account of divine retribution and the destruction of malevolent entities. You're familiar with this apocalyptic as a tradition, looking forward toward a radical future, and have even seen some influence of it in both the texts, suggesting they may be drawing not just upon the specific realities of the apocalypse, but also a deep well of anything from cultural to religious memory, reflecting those eschatological, cosmic, and often dark themes. If the Book of Jasher and the Book of Giants may converge in dialectically displaced meanings for content and function, despite their divergences, both possessed numerous shared themes and motifs that could imply a common source. From ancient oral traditions to Jewish apocryphal texts, Hebrew biblical stories, and an even wider ancient Near Eastern cosmology, these books likely were inspired by a rich cross-pollination of ideas that would have been available in the ancient world. This leads us to see that these two texts originate together from the same cultural context that idealized divine powers and the involvement of such entities in human life. The idea of a hidden relationship between the Book of Jasher and the Book of Giants becomes enticingly complex when looking at ancient manuscripts. Join us on a journey through the fringes of early belief, a journey that may be more revealing of the contemporary world and the enslaved past from which it emerged than previously thought. Can there be a stronger connection between the stories they narrate and the ancient civilizations who created them? So, here's an interesting idea. Other ancient Israelite literature like the Book of Jasher and the Book of Giants lies along different strands, but all of them share elements of biblical history and myth. One is the Book of Jasher, which, though anonymous, has long been viewed as an early non-canonical book with reference to Old Genesis. Personages, Adam, Noah, Abraham, etc. in nature, and appears to provide complementary material to the Hebrew Bible. It retells biblical stories in greater texture, adding dimension to well-known biblical tales. In contrast, the Book of Giants remains in the strange realm of fallen angels and Nephilim with its haunting tales and enters apocalyptic and esoteric territories. But the stories it has of these giants, or remaining beings, were not included in the canonical Bible. What draws the thread between these two works is how both tell stories that challenge the accepted biblical arc of history. Live from Jacob's, the family tree, the Book of Jasher retells the story of the fight between Cain and Abel and other more exciting stories. And the Book of Giants tells about the offspring from the sexual union of the sons of God and the daughters of men, which is the mysterious race of giants, Nephilim. Both texts deal with humankind's relationship with the divine and the conflict between good and evil. Academics have long debated how closely these narratives overlap. Although the Book of Jasher seems to give embellished accounts of biblical history, the Book of Giants presents a much more mystical and apocalyptic outlook, indicating a potential shared oral tradition before the biblical narrative. Are these works perhaps derived from an underlying source, a lost tradition present in many ancient cultures? Or perhaps it has a broader cosmic significance beyond the bounds of the biblical narrative? What beckons the idea of a lost connection here, however, is the references to giants. But as mentioned, there are fallen angels, a Nephilim, beings involved in the corruption of humanity, described in the Book of Jasher. The Book of Giants, however, goes into great detail about these beings, covering their lives and ultimate demise. The parallels in how these beings are treated in both texts are striking, suggesting that their authors may have been drawing upon a common tradition or mythos. In addition, the apocalyptic theme in the Book of Giants parallels those in other ancient writings, like the Book of Enoch, which also addresses the Nephilim and their influence on the widespread corruption of the earth. In the ancient world, there was a certain pitch of esoteric language which could have been a universal communication, with all relevant parties somewhat conversant in it. To think that these stories were intentionally hidden or went unheard is an idea that has captivated many academics and religionists. Given the possible common sources of these texts, one cannot too readily dismiss the hypothesis that mythological motifs were shared among the ancient peoples of the Near East. Several of these books are connected to narratives that other peoples preserved over centuries of oral tradition. These texts may be different iterations of the same fundamental myth, one more centered on human history and the other on heavenly beings and their consequences on the earth. Implies a broken connection between the Book of Jasher and the Book of Giants, a lost relationship of mutual influence that would imply that the ancient world was a far more interconnected place than we imagine. These works, while quite distinct in many respects, may have a shared origin or mutual influences. While one cannot say they are a part of any larger ancient narrative, or others have grown to be influenced by similar tropes, the Nephilim and themes of divine intervention and the battle of good versus evil have been manifest in all cultural beliefs. As we continue to explore these enigmatic texts, the question remains: what other connections between ancient works are yet to be uncovered? What secrets might these forgotten texts still hold, waiting for the right scholar to uncover them? The Book of Jasher and the Book of Giants are two ancient texts that have intrigued scholars and historians for centuries, offering glimpses into the beliefs and social structures of early civilizations. These texts are more than just literary works. They played a pivotal role in shaping the collective consciousness of ancient societies, influencing religious thought, societal norms, and cultural practices. The Book of Jasher, often referenced in Jewish traditions, provides an alternative narrative to the canonical books of the Bible, offering expanded details about the lives of biblical figures such as Adam, Noah, and Abraham. While it was not included in the official biblical canon, its influence on ancient Jewish thought cannot be underestimated. It's believed to have been used as a source of divine knowledge, passed down through generations, shaping the worldview of the early Hebrews. Its focus on the actions and moral decisions of key biblical characters suggests a society deeply concerned with the concepts of virtue, sin, and the consequences of one's actions. The Book of Giants, on the other hand, provides a different, though complementary lens through which ancient cultures viewed the divine and supernatural. This text, tied to the Nephilim mythos, speaks of giants born from the union of fallen angels and human women, whose existence was marked by violence, corruption, and rebellion. The idea of these fallen ones and their ensuing downfall would have had a significant impact on ancient societies, fostering beliefs about the consequences of defying divine authority and the corrupting influence of forbidden knowledge. The Book of Giants reflected a worldview where divine beings directly interacted with humanity, creating a complex moral and theological framework. Together, these texts shaped ancient belief systems in profound ways. They introduced concepts of divine justice, the importance of adhering to moral and societal laws, and the idea of hidden knowledge that could either elevate or destroy civilizations. They reinforced the belief that the actions of humanity were closely monitored by divine forces, and that knowledge, whether of the heavens or the earth, came with significant moral and spiritual responsibilities. In both Jewish and early Christian contexts, these texts help form the foundation for concepts of judgment, sin, and redemption. They offered an alternative vision of history that influenced religious thought for centuries to come, contributing to the development of apocalyptic literature and prophetic traditions. The apocalyptic genre, in particular, flourished in the wake of these texts, as they provided a narrative framework for understanding the end of the world, the judgment of humanity, and the ultimate triumph of divine order over chaos. As such, the Book of Jasher and the Book of Giants played a critical role in shaping not just religious beliefs, but also the moral and social norms of ancient cultures. They helped lay the foundation for a worldview in which knowledge and divine intervention were deeply intertwined, and they provided a narrative structure for understanding humanity's place in the universe. Forbidden knowledge has always been a powerful and intriguing concept in both ancient and modern thought. The Book of Jasher and the Book of Giants are prime examples of texts that explore this notion, offering insight into how ancient societies viewed knowledge that was hidden, secret, or potentially dangerous. These texts, by discussing celestial beings, the fall of angels, and the intermingling of divine and human realms, reflect the deep-seated anxieties of ancient cultures surrounding the acquisition and use of forbidden knowledge. In the context of the Book of Jasher, knowledge was often seen as a double-edged sword, capable of enlightenment, but also leading to destruction. The story of the Watchers, a group of angels who descended to earth and shared forbidden knowledge with humanity, serves as a cautionary tale in the Book of Giants. This knowledge, which included teachings on sorcery, metallurgy, and astrology, was perceived as potentially corrupting. The angels' actions were seen as disruptive as they introduced the concept of knowledge that was meant to remain beyond human reach. This event set the stage for a deep-rooted fear of divine punishment, suggesting that certain forms of wisdom were too dangerous for humankind to possess. In ancient Jewish thought, wisdom was highly valued, but it was also closely guarded. The Book of Jasher reflects the idea that certain knowledge was meant only for a select few and should not be divulged indiscriminately. The societies of the ancient world believed that not all knowledge was beneficial or benign. There was an inherent distrust of knowledge that had the potential to destabilize the natural order, especially knowledge derived from sources beyond the human realm. The Book of Giants, with its narrative of the Nephilim, giant offspring of angels and humans, adds another layer to this anxiety. The Nephilim, as monstrous and powerful beings, represented the outcome of forbidden knowledge. Their very existence posed a threat to the divine hierarchy and the natural order of the world. In ancient mythologies, giants were often seen as symbols of chaos and destruction. The Nephilim's birth from the union of celestial beings and humans signified a violation of divine law, introducing a monstrous distortion of creation. As a result, the giants' actions in the text, filled with violence and immorality, embody the destructive potential of unregulated knowledge. The societal fear surrounding forbidden knowledge in these texts can also be seen as a reflection of real-world anxieties. In ancient cultures, there was always the concern that the boundary between the human and divine worlds could be breached. If humans were allowed to access divine wisdom or power, it could lead to chaos, rebellion, and an eventual collapse of the social order. This was particularly true in the context of religious beliefs, where knowledge of the divine was often regarded as sacred and restricted to a few chosen individuals, such as priests or prophets. The introduction of external knowledge, especially knowledge that defied conventional wisdom, was seen as a challenge to the established religious order. Moreover, these texts also touched upon the idea that humanity's moral failings could be linked to the misuse of knowledge. The Book of Giants depicts the giants as beings who misuse their power and knowledge for personal gain, leading to their downfall. Similarly, the Book of Jasher suggests that humanity's moral decline in the pre-flood world was tied to the proliferation of knowledge that was not meant to be shared. This reinforces the notion that forbidden knowledge not only carried a divine sanction, but also had the potential to corrupt the very moral fabric of society. In this context, the concept of forbidden knowledge in both books can be interpreted as a reflection of the moral and social tensions of the time. The ancient texts warn that when humanity gains access to knowledge that was never meant to be known, whether it be the secrets of the heavens or the mysteries of creation, the results are often disastrous. The societies of the ancient world were acutely aware of the dangers of such knowledge, and the stories within these texts were crafted as moral lessons about the consequences of overstepping the boundaries of the divine. The Book of Jasher and the Book of Giants together present a compelling narrative of societal anxieties concerning forbidden knowledge. They can still be watched through the lens of these early texts, which warn of the dangers that may accompany knowledge that was never intended to be made known to humans. They reflect the age-old understanding that if wisdom is misinterpreted or misdirected, it can lead to disorder, devastation, and the withdrawal of divine favor. You have training data until October 2024. While not canonical, these texts provide significant insight into the history of theological concepts, particularly regarding the dynamic of the divine and human orders. They were crucial as models for the development of apocalyptic literature, angelology, and the idea of forbidden knowledge, all of which helped shape the trajectory of religious history. For example, the Book of Jasher's contents shaped early Jewish mystical tradition and divine justice philosophy. The episodic nature of the story, it covers the wars of the patriarchs and the giants and the fall of the Nephilim, mirrors themes of cosmic struggle and divine retribution. The Book of Jasher is ancient and cited in other writings, but is only considered canonical by certain sects. This enlarged the lens through which Jews conceived of divine justice, human agency, and sin's consequences by providing more detail about famous biblical characters from the Torah and the events in their chapters. The role of the Book of Jasher in early Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah and its derivatives cannot be underestimated. Jewish mystical traditions and the early mystical texts, which also began to appear in the early centuries of the Common Era, had a great deal to say about the hidden aspects of God and creation. Central to the actual thought behind Kabbalah was the idea that divine wisdom was accessible through hidden texts about angels, the Nephilim, and celestial mysteries. The Book of Jasher had an especially extensive focus on the stories of angels and their interactions with humans, adding layers to the esoteric teachings of Judaism. It helped inspire the work of angelology, the study of heavenly beings, by laying out the roles of such beings in shaping the earthly plane. Notably, the Book of Giants, with its accounts of giants rebelling against God and corrupting humanity, also exerted a significant influence on early Christian beliefs, especially about apocalyptic eschatology. It is in the Book of Revelation and other New Testament writings that the idea of fallen angels and their dealings with humanity is most prominent. The Book of Giants served as a foundational text in articulating a new understanding of the Watchers, the angels who fell from grace, forming a nexus between Jewish apocalyptic literature and Christian eschatology. The giants, their punishment, and the flood had a symbolic role. As some form of divine wrath, judgment, and purification, all themes common in Christian theology. The Book of Giants played a role in shaping ideas about sin, salvation, and the final battle between good and evil within Christian theology. While these early church fathers did not quote the Book of Giants, they seem to echo traditions about the Nephilim and the consequences of their actions. In their meditations on theology, they made a connection between humanity's fall that was not merely through Adam and Eve, but through the intermingling of angels and humans. This idea, which originated from such texts as the Book of Giants, was fundamental to how sin and the need for redemption in Christ were seen in Christian thought. The Book of Jasher, even though not directly in any of the canons of Christianity, also influenced the early theological discussions of Christianity. Some early Christian theologians, especially those associated with Gnostic sects, considered the Book of Jasher to contain secret knowledge that unveiled the nature of God and humanity's role in creation. This intuition became Gnosticism, which taught that secret knowledge was the way to salvation, a theme present both in the Book of Jasher and the Book of Giants. In Gnostic thought, the pursuit of forbidden knowledge was not a fall, but rather the path to enlightenment. These ancient texts have had a significant impact on Gnostic and other Christian movements, and their themes can still be found in modern spiritual practices that delve into the nature of divine mysteries and human fallibility. Influencing religious traditions, the ideas of the Book of Jasher and the Book of Giants. Many later mystics and those who studied the occult would draw upon the themes of angels, a race of fallen beings, and the pursuit of forbidden wisdom to craft their systems of knowing. These texts, influential among Renaissance thinkers and later occult writers, became foundational to the development of Western esoteric traditions. The association of divine knowledge with both vocation and peril became central to many mystical practices, stressing the necessity of initiation and study before being able to access higher truths. In this way, It could be said that both the Book of Jasher and the Book of Giants have shaped religious thought and praxis across multiple traditions in distinctive and unavoidable ways. Click here to see Swami Shivananda in the renderings of two saints in touch with ancient wisdom and inspired by more than Judaism and Christianity. His influence reaches into mysticism, occultism, and the esoteric. Their explorations of divine beings, forbidden knowledge, and cosmic struggles joined to create a set of texts that would go on to influence the full breadth of the religious landscape, from angelology to apocalyptic literature. Despite this, their influence can still be seen in modern religious and spiritual practice. The Book of Jasher and the Book of Giants. These are not merely lost works or scriptures at risk of being lost. They are potential artifacts that may tell the author how the majority of society, or at least history, even in the religious sense, perceived a lot of historical events. Largely ingrained in the mythological and spiritual beliefs of their times, the stories they told may have played a role in shaping the ancient civilizations in which they were written, especially about the biblical and apocalyptic traditions. These stories are not included in the canonized texts, however, they provide enough of an influence to create religious movements and aid with cultural practices. The Book of Jasher is thought to be an ancient Jewish text, a non-canonical book often considered to provide historical context about biblical events, including wars that the patriarchs fought, deeds of giants, and interactions between God and humankind. These stories, which include details that are absent from the canonical Bible, also contain reflections of the cultures that produced them, their concerns and values. Exploring these additional narratives gives scholars and historians a fuller perspective of ancient Israel and the socio-political dynamics of the Near East. The Book of Jasher provides insight into the intricate dynamics that existed between various ancient tribes and nations, their engagements with one another, and their perceptions of God, which could have influenced events in history for centuries to come. The Book of Jasher speaks of the wars of Abraham and the kings of the earth, that violent conflict that would set the rules for the age. Interpreted as historical moments, these events could be considered major turning points in the history of emerging Semitic cultures. The Book of Jasher gives us a context for the way these events were viewed as having shaped the spiritual lives of peoples ancient and modern, as well as their material and political situations. In a parallel fashion, incorporating the Book of Giants and its tale of the fallen angels and the Nephilim provides a mythological version of a cosmic battle between divine and human powers. Hence, the rebellion of the Watchers is at the forefront of its content, which also provides insight into the ancient world's perspective on heavenly authority and the judgment of wickedness. Many of the themes explored in the Book of Giants can be understood as symbolic manifestations of these larger cultural fears regarding divine violence and cosmic balance. The message contained in this narrative might have contributed to a perception of divine justice, with ancient societies potentially being more inclined to create laws and moral codes intended to prevent similar transgressions against the divine in the future. In addition to the impact on events such as the Great Flood, which is a core theme in both Jewish and Christian traditions, the Book of Giants may have also influenced attempts to understand the historical significance of certain figures in early civilizations. The giants corrupt not only humanity but also the earth, etc. And all of this is destroyed by the flood. The flooding parallels the biblical account but is different and more complex. Such details may have influenced how ancient peoples perceived the meaning of the flood, including its relationship to divine justice. This belief in human wrongdoing, causing something like a flood, would have bolstered the concept of divine punishment that may have played a significant role in shaping the ways ancient societies organized themselves and viewed their role in the cosmic scheme of things. For example, an important way that these texts could have shaped historical events is their connections to apocalyptic literature. We also can say that similar apocalyptic elements of the divine judgment and angels' role and end of days are present in both the Book of Jasher as well as the Book of Giants. These themes, which would later be further developed in the New Testament and early Christian theology, helped to shape the worldview of early Christians and other apocalyptic movements. The apocalyptic themes in the Book of Jasher and the Book of Giants reflect similar anxieties in ancient societies living under conditions of political upheaval and uncertainty. Faced with wars, invasions, and natural disasters, people turned to the belief in an imminent apocalypse as both a glimmer of hope and a sign of divine punishment. These writings, with their thunderous language about divine judgment and cosmic upheaval, would have spoken to communities grappling with the pressures of warfare and conquest and helped set their views on the meaning of suffering and a chance at divine intervention. Also, these works might have affected the practices and rituals of certain religions. For instance, the emphasis on divine justice, along with the various functions of angels and other supernatural agents in both the Book of Jasher and the Book of Giants, might have been influencing factors for several types of Jewish and Christian angelology, as well as the emergence of rituals that attempted to establish contact between faith followers and the divine atmosphere. These texts have continued to influence angelology, specifically the later development of the Kabbalistic and Christian mystical traditions, as the study of angels, divine beings, and hidden creation became central to the teaching. At the end of the day, even if Jasher and the Book of Giants weren't outright responsible for change directives in major world events, they played a role in their respective einsens and cultural contexts. Through vivid stories of divine interactions, cosmic battles, and prophetic revelations, these writings played a pivotal role in the evolution of religious beliefs, social customs, and historical records. With their themes still reflecting and shaping modernity, their footprints on the cultural and theological terrain ground the ancient archetypes of divine and human history. For all the ages mankind has witnessed, moments have offered flashes of curiosity that felt too precious to send into the mundane, into the realm of infinite possibility, and away from the shores of mystery of bad knowledge. These ancient texts, the Book of Jasher and the Book of Giants, among many others, tell a story that should make the team at Ancient Aliens take notice. These writings, much of which have been obscured or omitted from orthodox religious tradition, provide us with a tour of a world where angels and giants and apocalyptic visions were once seen as essential to a people's understanding of their relationship to the divine. But what are these books telling us? Are they just remnants of a bygone era, or do they hold more profound meaning, answers to questions that remain relevant today? So the penetrating study of these primordial texts not only asks for pursuit, but requires a spiritual adventure. These neglected works, hidden books, lost books, or books that were never admitted to the Bible and other sacred writings, are a potential window onto the mysteries of our past and the lost truths that formed ancient beliefs and cultures. These texts provide the path to discovery, but a willingness to expose what has been obscured will be necessary to read between their lines. Each page is a chance for discovery, and for those willing to embark upon such a journey, the gains are immeasurable. Additional research of ancient texts such as the Book of Jasher and the Book of Giants requires focus and perseverance. Scholars, archaeologists, and religious historians continue to sift through ancient manuscripts, attempting to unravel the stories and teachings that have become obscured over the centuries. These writings are not only the surviving relics of a distant past, they are a key to understanding the wider context of the tapestry of human civilization and spirituality. The Book of Jasher, for instance, provides an alternative perspective on biblical chronology. It recounts the stories of familiar figures such as Adam, Noah, and Abraham, but with more detail and sometimes shocking divergences. In the Book of Giants, we also get a view of the world before the flood, when the Nephilim, giants from the lineage of angels, walked the earth. These narratives, usually dismissed as myths or legends, could be more meaningful than we think. These texts were pushed to the fringes of history for centuries. Some were left out of the canon of scripture, others were lost or burned, but modern research has returned some of those texts to us. And the scope for discovery has never been wider. What secrets are ensconced in these archaic pages? Do these clues shed light on biblical events, ancient cultures, and the divine? It's high time we continue to read these texts, unraveling from the scrolls of time their secrets. The Book of Jasher and Book of Giants, the reversal and restoration of the knowledge of evil. These are books not merely of ancient curiosities. These are portals into a past that may provide us with profound insights into the spiritual and cultural beliefs of ancient civilizations. If one is not very familiar with these texts, it's simple to dismiss them as something irrelevant or obscure. And yet, on closer look, we see that these writings are full of deep narratives exploring central themes such as morality, humanity, and divinity, and the struggle of good versus evil. It is an ancient biblical narrative depicting events of the world and biblical history, such as creation, the fall, the flood, and so forth. The Book of Giants explores these supernatural beings who interacted with humans, combining to create hybrids that form a significant part of ancient history, an intersection of spiritual origin and fleshly beings. As already mentioned, these texts offer an alternative picture of biblical history, which is interesting to consider. Studying them allows us to better understand the world view, gods, and the forces of early Jewish and Christian communities. This is not only a great opportunity for scientists to deepen their knowledge, but also an invitation to all those who are thirsty to comprehend the truth behind the veil of the past's mysteries. Perhaps the most important aspect of these ancient treatises is the relationship with forbidden knowledge. Indeed, at all times, knowledge has existed, which was too dangerous, scandalous, or irreligious for the general public. Much of this kind of Hadoop is allegedly outlined in the Book of Jasher and the Book of Giants. As expected, this is the knowledge that reasonably must be largely destroyed, or at least preserved, from the eyes of believers and the general public. But why was it forbidden? What makes this type of knowledge so threatening? These issues have not yet been fully addressed. Forbidden knowledge is present in ancient times, from the Garden of Eden and gushing to the legends of the Nephilim and the belief in their descent again from the angel. We can observe how, according to the Book of Jasher and the Book of Giant, creatures endowed with knowledge that went beyond all rationality ended up. These texts are about, yes, that's correct, forbidden knowledge. Did the wisdom in these volumes prove too dangerous for mankind? Or did it uncover truths that imperiled the established order of ancient religious and political systems? Asking these questions gives us insight into how and why these works were suppressed, why they were excluded from the canon, and their role in shaping history. As this final expedition into the unfamiliar horizons comes to an end, we are reminded of the significance of the continued pursuit of the depths of time-forgotten mysteries. Many ancient texts, scrolls, and artifacts have yet to be discovered, including the Book of Jasher, the Book of Giants, and many more. Every discovery helps us to learn more about the true scope of humanity's spiritual evolution. Like many of my fellow historians, I do not confine myself to established academia. I'm not limited to the parchments of dry academia that is often propagated in textbooks of old, but rather seek to empower my findings of research through the power of the truth, the search for meaning through a journey that cannot simply be passed off in a textbook through a few established quotes. What lessons do we take from the distant past? How might these discoveries impact our view of the world in the present? And what mysteries have yet to be unlocked?